Welcome to the Great Loop Radio Podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. If you were with us back around Labor Day weekend, early September, we brought you on a trip through the upper part of the inland rivers from Chicago to Paducah. Wes and Amy Litzy did a great job leading us through that. Today, the calendar has changed to October already, so we're going to bring you the second half of the inland rivers. And Carolyn and Pete Westbay are my guests today. They're going to guide us through that. Before we bring them in, as always, I do want to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, Waterway Guide Media, and Kathy All. She is a certified financial planner with Edward Jones. So with the sponsors recognized, and we certainly thank them, I'd like to go ahead and bring Carolyn and Pete into the conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it, Kim. Hopefully we can help somebody out on a few things.
I think you definitely can. And we thank you for joining us. We, for our regular listeners and members know, we have been trying to kind of focus on one thing a month and put that out through all of our various channels. So this podcast, our Great Loop Link newsletter, our monthly virtual docktails. This month, there's something about the lower part of the inland rivers from Paducah on down in all of those, thanks to Carolyn and Pete, because they wrote the article for the Great Loop Link newsletter, and they will be joining us for virtual docktails. So let's jump in. First of all, for those who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your Great Loop experience.
Well, this is my lovely wife, Carolyn. She grew up on the Great Lakes, Lake St. Clair, Michigan. Her dad owned a small marina. She's been boating all her life, mostly Chris Crafts and power boats. I learned to sail in our sailing dinghy. Our family lived in San Francisco area, so we sailed on the bay. Then we moved east to New England. We sailed in Buzzards Bay, Mass, but also into Maine a bit. I had no day widgeon as a teenager, and then I was on the high school sailing team. We heard about the Great Loop before we were married. Carolyn bought me chart books about the loop as a wedding gift.
Oh, wow. That's a unique wedding gift. That's not something I've heard before.
Yep. We bought our American Tug 34 in 2018 and then retired 2019. Planning to start the loop in 2020. Then COVID hit. But we still decided to go. Very isolated on the boat, obviously. But we had to do the Western Erie instead of Canada. But it was still, I highly recommend that.
Fabulous. Anybody who hasn't done the Western area, fabulous.
I hear that. And our current boat can't get under those bridges. If anybody listening is considering it, 15.5 feet is the charted height of those bridges on the Western Erie. So you were able to do that, which is fabulous.
Yep. You can always rent a boat though and do the Western Erie. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
Might be next thing on our list.
Here we go.
Yep. So obviously extensive cruising experience. I don't know if you know how many miles you've done. You're platinum loopers, correct? We're
in the process of platinum, but we're 4 years into the process of platinum. What we did just realize the other day is we have now done 25 states in our boat since we crossed gold. So yeah, so we've hit half the states on Heron. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. One of the things I really liked about the article you wrote for us for the Great Loop Link, which came out on October 1st, is that you covered some tips, common terms, common situations on the inland rivers, because they really are very different than other parts of the route. So let's kind of start with that. One of the things you talked about is encountering tows, which is going to happen. So tell us a little bit about communicating with the tows.
Communicating with the tows. So the big thing about communicating with the tows is polite. Just be as polite as possible. Yes, sir. No, sir. I use a lot of sirs and whatnot in dealing with the tows. Try to reach out to them. We don't have AIS send. We do have AIS receive. So we're always kind of looking ahead a little bit on the river. And I'm writing down the tow names so that when we get up to them, if it isn't a situation that we need to coordinate with them, we're reaching out ahead of time. We're being proactive. And a lot of times if we reach out to the tow ahead of time, they know the rivers. So they'll tell us, hold up until the next turn. Let me get through that next turn, and then there'll be a wide open spot and you can go on my starboard or on my port. And so it just, their experience greatly helps us. So we've learned to reach out to them.
Yeah.
They're the priority on the rivers. They get top choice.
Yes.
What's happening.
And I love that, you know, you're both showing them the respect that they know the rivers and this is their workplace and they're professionals, but also learning to communicate effectively with them. And one of those things is upbound and downbound, which when I first started involvement with the loop confused me for some reason. I don't think it's actually that confusing, at least not on the inland rivers. But go ahead and explain why loopers need to know if they're upbound or downbound and how they know.
So upbound and downbound, it's basically the water flow. If you're going with the water, you're heading downbound. If you're going against the water flow, you're going upbound. So really from, well, we're picking up in Paducah, so I think that's already off the Ohio, but it's only that one little piece of the Ohio that you're really going upbound. The rest of the trip is going to be all downbound for inland rivers.
Even if you're southbound, you could still be actually northbound because the river twists so much.
Right.
But yeah, you could be
upbound and be going south.
Right, south or north, exactly. Yeah. So it just gets confusing if you're trying to tell either locks or bridges or tows, well, we're going east on, no. Just upbound, downbound, everybody knows what that means. Even with the locks, they'll know what side to expect you on, what side of the lock they've got to prepare for you on by saying upbound and downbound. And the tows definitely appreciate that terminology too. So yeah, so it's upbound versus downbound.
Absolutely, very helpful in dealing with the tows as well as dealing with the locks, so they know which direction you're coming from. So yeah, all of the inland rivers, you will be, if you're doing the loop counterclockwise, as most loopers do, you're downbound the entire time with the exception of the Ohio. So it's pretty easy to remember.
Right. The other terminology that confused me for a long time, and you don't hear it used so much on the radio, is RDB or LDB. So right descending bank and left descending bank. You see it more when you're looking for anchorages or if you're looking for logs in the river that somebody's posted someplace. You'll hear the RDB and the LDB. It took me a while, had to scratch my head a few times, and finally I went, oh, right descending bank, left descending bank. And the same thing, if you're flowing with the water, the right descending bank is always on your starboard side. If you're flowing with the water, the left descending bank is always on your port side. So just, you know, it's pretty straightforward, but until you are used to that lingo, it can be a little confusing. So
well, and thankfully that lingo correlates with the direction loopers are going for, like we said, all of the inland rivers except for the Ohio. You are downbound. So, and there is no right ascending bank. It's always right descending or left descending bank, and loopers are downbound, so descending on almost all of the inland rivers. So yeah, you're right. That is something that it takes a while to figure out what they're talking about, and you see it in a lot of cruising guides as well when they're telling you a marina is at mile 440 on the left descending banks, just so you know which side of the river. So that's a great tip as well. We've covered the 1 and the 2 whistle before, but I think it's super important, and you had some tips for helping to remember what that means when you're communicating with these commercial vessels, arranging a pass, whether you're overtaking or meeting, you're making those arrangements and they may tell you to see them on the 1 or the 2 whistle. Give us your tip for remembering what that means.
Yeah, and I have to say that all the diagrams and all the descriptions of the 1 whistle and the 2 whistle, I looked at them and I'm going, what? I can't understand this. Finally had to sit down and work out the puzzle. And the Creeches helped out a lot, and Chris and Elise helped out a lot with this. And the big thing to remember is 1 whistle is your port side regardless. Whether it's oncoming or overtaking, 1 whistle is your port side. A 2 whistle is your starboard side. Oncoming or overtaking, it's your starboard side. And port is 1 syllable, starboard is 2 syllables. So it's a little bit easy to remember. But then I also got out my nifty label maker, because in the crunch moment sometimes, or if we haven't been on the rivers for a while, I'm like, what's the 1, what's the 2? So on my helm, I put on a label maker that says 1 is port and 2 is starboard, just for that moment that I need that quick reference. So,
absolutely. Having that cheat sheet is great. I do want to clarify one thing though, so to make sure everybody's clear on this. So when you're saying 2 is starboard, you are taking that other vessel on your starboard side.
Correct.
And when you're saying 1 is port, you're taking that other vessel on the port side. So I want to make sure everybody's super clear on that. One of
Right.
the other, reminder tips is to think of an analog clock.
Right.
And I use that one a lot. A one, you point the bow of the boat towards the one on the analog clock,
Yeah.
which effectively you're pointing it to starboard, but that is so that you can take that vessel on your port, which is exactly what Carolyn's saying. So initially, when I read that in your article, I went, wait, isn't that backwards? And then I realized, no, that's not backwards. That's perfect.
Yeah, yeah,
We just
yeah.
have to make sure we give the whole terminology that taking them on our port is a one, which means we're pointing the boat
Starboard.
to starboard. So hopefully everybody's clear on
Yeah.
that. If not, certainly reach out. info@greatloop.org is the easiest email address to remember. We're always happy to help clarify these things. But those are some great tips. And another question we get a lot that I've never had a great answer to is how do you know the mile markers on the rivers? Somebody will tell you some things that, there's an obstruction at mile 115.6. How do you know what mile marker you're at? There's not signs. Apparently there
No.
used to be, though.
And we've seen a couple. So if you
Mhm.
look hard, you can find a couple, but don't rely on them for figuring out where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to realize that in navionics, if you look in the middle of the river, there's almost like a little bullseye black dot that will give you that mile marker number. And sometimes it has SM next to it, which means statute miles. Sometimes it has MM next to it for mile marker. And sometimes it just says mile next to it. It all means the same thing. But on navionics, you've kind of got to go up the river and down the river a little bit when you're looking at your charts to figure out where that spot's at and then kind of extrapolate where you're at in relation to that dot. I've just heard recently the aqua maps, if you touch the map in the river, it'll pop the mile marker up for you, which is much handier. We've just gotten used to using navionics, and so that's what we've stuck with. But yeah, everything on the rivers pretty much gives you a mile, marinas in particular, where mile marker. And initially I was always like, okay, that's great. Where am I? I have no clue. So, but now we do. We have a
Right.
clue.
Or looking at a chart trying to figure out where that is. And unless you're tapping around in your navigation software, it's hard to figure that out. So I think that is a great tip to share with people because not everybody knows that, especially if they're still in the planning phases. And the other thing you cautioned about is be prepared for waiting at locks. Tell us about some of your experiences and how you handle that.
So just as I would recommend to any boater that as you travel, you always want to pick places to bail out to stop. So I have my destination I'd like to make it to, but if I can't make it to that destination, we've got bailout A, bailout B, bailout C, and then our destination. Same thing with locks. When I look at locks and I'm charting for the day, I always look near the lock to figure out where we could drop anchor if we have to, that we're out of the channel, not blocking any commercial traffic coming through, and yet we can sit and wait, because we've had a couple of waits where we sat there for 8 hours on the hook waiting to get through the lock. So always kind of plan for it. And then as you get closer to the lock, I'm always looking at AIS to see if there's a backup of tows near the lock. At that point, if there is, I call the lock and ask, what's the wait? And as soon as I get the response back, if there is a wait, we're finding a spot to drop the hook and just going, okay, let's relax for a bit. So yeah.
Yeah. And for those who maybe have not, listened to us talk about this before, recreational vessels are kind of the bottom of the barrel in priorities coming through the locks. So 8 hours is unusual, but very, very possible on the Great Loop. It's certainly, you've probably been through hundreds of locks and probably have, can count on one hand how many times you've waited that long. But some wait is typical.
Yeah, some wait is typical. And I will say that 8 hour wait was on the Ohio River a couple summers ago when they were working on multiple locks on the river. But we've had to go through locks in the dark waiting. As a matter of fact, Starved Rock Lock on the Illinois River is one of them that we waited 4 or 5 hours and watched the sun go down as we sat there. So it happens. So
yeah, but your advice to, kind of have a bailout point and anchorage that you feel safe at should that happen
right.
is a great strategy for dealing with it. One more tip, the rivers is a place where you have to expect to anchor. I know, there are some loopers who love to anchor and some loopers who prefer marinas. This is a place, unless you can go very fast and cover a lot of mileage, you're going to anchor a few times on the inland rivers.
Right.
You had a couple of tips that can help make that also a little bit, less angsty for people.
Right. So definitely read your chart, get comfortable with reading your chart. You can find a lot of places where there's a kind of a bubble along the side of the river or a little bow on the side of the river that you can go over and anchor on. you always want to, when you're anchoring, kind of scope it out. As always, we tend to do a little bit of a circle, make sure that we're going to have deep enough water where we want to be eventually. And then we go back upriver, turn into the water, drop your hook, and then back it in. Once you're backed in, make sure you're still behind the buoys on the river. Make sure you're still out of that path of travel. Set your anchor alarm. And then the biggest tip we've got is that as the first tow goes by, you hail them on the radio and ask them, are we far enough off the river? Is this a good spot for us to be? Usually the spots we've picked, we are far enough off, but by doing that, the tow captains share information on their own communication systems. And so that'll put us on the dot on the map for the other tows coming down, that they know where we're at and they're aware that we're around that corner or on that straight stretch or whatever. So it's just a little peace of mind that the tow captains then know where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love, these are just common sense things that people don't think of. So I really appreciate you sharing those. We did say we're going to kind of walk through the route from Paducah to Mobile. We're ready to start that. These tips have been great, but let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's take a quick break though and play a message from a sponsor. When we come back, we'll start in Paducah and kind of, talk about a possible itinerary down the water. So we'll be back in a moment. Include Prairie Harbor Yacht Club in your Great Loop journey. Nestled on the Illinois-Wisconsin border along Lake Michigan, our facility is private and gated, featuring state-of-the-art floating docks with 240-volt power and convenient access to nearby airports and ride shares. Unwind in our tranquil prairie setting. Take a dip in the heated pool or enjoy our beautiful clubhouse. To reserve your spot, call Harbor Master Matt at 262-697-3200 or visit us at prairieharboryachtclub.com. Embark on the journey of a lifetime with the new Leopard 40 Power Cat, the ideal companion for exploring America's Great Loop. Enjoy unparalleled comfort and fuel efficiency as you navigate this iconic waterway. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or a first-time adventurer, the Leopard 40 Power Cat offers the ultimate in travel ease and luxury. It's time to set sail on your dream voyage, and it all starts with the Leopard 40 Power Cat. Discover a new level of exploration and embark on an unforgettable experience. Contact us today and make your Great Loop adventure a reality. www.leopardcatamarans.com. We're back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. My guests today are Carolyn and Pete Westbay. They are sharing some of their tips for handling the inland rivers, and now we're going to jump into kind of their favorite stops from Paducah to Mobile. That's where you'll hit the Gulf Coast. This is kind of the lower half of the inland rivers. There are probably countless itineraries you could use. So, Pete and Carolyn can tell us their favorites, and that's the plan. So let's start in Paducah. I know you had a couple of favorite things to do in Paducah, so go ahead and tell us those, and then we'll cover the first day on the water.
Yeah. So a couple of things that we really enjoyed in Paducah, the National Quilt Museum. I am not a quilter.
No, yeah, even if you're not a fan, it's still cool to see it.
It was amazing. It was I was just blown away by the work that some of the people have done. So strong recommend there. There's another couple of other small museums in town that are very nice. There's the what do we call it? The dam wall, I don't know what to call it, the water gates. Yeah, the murals all along there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I stumble on that. And then Kirchhoff's Bakery in Paducah.
Yep.
We don't go past Paducah. I mean, we've gotten off the freeway if we're driving by to go into Kirchhoff's to pick stuff up. It's that good. Go early, they sell out quick. That's all I have to say. So
wow.
Yeah, really, really strong recommend on Kirchhoff's. So
okay. So for the two of you in your boat, what's the typical number of travel days for you on this section of the loop to go from Paducah to Mobile?
So the first time we went through, we did 12 days, 12 stops. The second time we went through, we did 14. The longer we boat, the shorter our boating days become. We just want to get off the water quicker, so we're not as pushing as hard. The first time through, we were trying to get the loop done, and it was more of a go situation. So we wander a little bit more. The challenge with the Paducah to Mobile stretch is there are places you've got to go a little bit longer to be able to get to a better anchorage. So that's why we've had some longer days, but yeah.
Okay, so what's a possible first leg for that trip for people when they leave Paducah? What's the next stop?
Paducah to Green Turtle Bay is a quick, easy day. And
Mhm.
definitely strong recommend for stopping in at Green Turtle Bay. They do a great job for loopers.
Mhm.
There's not anything you could possibly need that they don't have there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've got restaurants in town, the grocery stores walkable in town. They're able to service, they've got a full
Haul
service.
out.
Yeah, haul out everything. And they can't do a nicer job. Everybody, that's why it's a perennial favorite with all the loopers, is because they just do such a nice job.
Yeah.
So,
There's also a salon and spa there,
oh,
which is a nice refresher after, doing half of the inland rivers so far. It's probably the last, potential multi-day stop for quite a while, unless I'm forgetting one or two.
right.
But,
Yeah.
as you're getting ready to head towards the Tenton, most of those are just going to be overnight stops. But Green
Yeah.
Turtle Bay is a place where you might want to rest up for a few days. So
Yep.
excellent. And then leaving there, what's kind of the next notable stop?
So a couple of next notable stops, we have done Paris Landing State Park. It's a very nice marina there. I think,
Yep.
did AGLCA do a rendezvous there at one point?
We did one. I want to say it was 20, gosh, I won't remember what year now, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Great
And-
facility. They decided to close down their conference center. So we would have gone back.
Oh, no.
But they were not going to have the conference center open any longer. But they've got that brand new lodge that is gorgeous as well.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, the lodge, because I was gonna say, we ate at the lodge a couple of times and had some of the best catfish fillets at the lodge that I've had
Mhm.
anywhere traveling. So,
Yeah.
so we've stayed there. The challenge with Paris Landing is there's not a lot very close by. So you're gonna need a cab to get into town. But that's the only drawback with being at Paris Landing. Other than that, it's a great marina, great facility. We've also gone into Birdsong Marina, and I know that's a little bit unique for some people. Birdsong is call the marina ahead of time. I don't know about deeper draft boats getting back there. Very windy, twisty, follow all the white poles sticking out, and don't expect a lot of help with the dock when you first get in there. But it's very unique to be at the only working pearl farm in the continental United States. So it was a unique experience going back in there. So
Absolutely.
yep. So let's see. After that, we have done either several anchorages or we've gone to Clifton Marina. Clifton Marina is another great stop. If you want to be at a marina, it's a great stop. It's a small marina. Call ahead because you're going to need to have reservations getting into those docks. They try to accommodate as many as they can, but there's only so much space. But Clifton has great food right at the dock. So really great burgers, really great stuff. Just walk up the dock, really, really good.
Yeah, that was a place we actually, it must have been a little bit later than this time of year, and I don't remember there being a ton of other loopers there, but that was a place we woke up with frost.
Okay.
But it was also beautiful because the leaves were changing. So there's pluses and minuses there, but we enjoyed that stop too. So far you've kind of given us some marinas, but also the possibility of anchorages in all of the rivers.
Right.
But from Clifton, what's a potential next stop?
So we have gone to, depending on the year that we've been at, you kind of get Grand Harbor, Aqua Yacht, Marina, and Pickwick State Park are all very close, just south of Pickwick Lock. So it's kind of a your choice. There's a lot of places to anchor right around in there too. But for various reasons, we've used all three of those marinas. So, and no pros or cons anyway. None of them are very close to anything. The advantage to Grand Harbor and Aqua Yacht Marinas, they do have courtesy cars. But the biggest thing for all three of them near there is getting a chance to go to Shiloh National Battlefield. And I'm not a big pro battlefield person. Usually walk out and it's a field and I go, okay, it's a field. Shiloh has markers that face the direction of battle. So you actually get an idea of what the battle was like. I was really kind of blown away by Shiloh. So if you can get a courtesy car, or get a rental car.
And it's huge. It's like 10 miles by car to do the tour.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
5-6 hours to drive through. Definite strong recommend on that.
Well, and I also love that, you've shared some recommendations. The Quilt Museum didn't sound like something that Pete would have normally gone to, but he went, outside of his normal, what he likes to do and really enjoyed it. And the same goes for you with the battlefield at Shiloh. And that's what the loop is all about, is kind of, experiencing the different things that you don't get to do in everyday life. So kudos to both of you for trying those things. And Iuka Aqua Yacht also has a pretty reputable yard, from what I understand. So if you arrive there and have dinged a prop or anything, that's probably gives that a little bit of an edge over the other places if you need some work done, because I don't believe the other two have a yard. I could be wrong there.
No, Pickwick is pretty bare bones state park. I mean, you know, it's got the restrooms and whatnot. Grand Harbor, again, it has the courtesy car and that's about it. I mean, they've got a little shop, but that's about it. So yeah, and no strike against them. It was a nice place, but so
and actually all those are places you could spend multiple days if you wanted to just take a little bit of a break too. I hadn't really thought about that far south, but at that point you're starting the 10 Tom and things get pretty remote. So go ahead and take us from that, you know, Iuka Pickwick area and head on down through the Divide Cut and down the Tom Bigby.
Yep, and at the start of the Tom Bigby, I'll put in a little bit of a plug right here, because just as you come to the bridge, we lost our first gold blooper flag. So if anybody finds it, just let us know. Anyway.
We'll be on the lookout.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, I keep saying I'm going to start, if I had the time, like putting a tag in with who they belong to, because we actually have had some show up at our office. That's, you know, somebody, oh, we found this on the beach in St. Petersburg, and we know whoever's White Burgee this is would want it back. And we're like, I'm sure they would too, but we have no idea. Going to start to number them or something.
Yeah. So once we got out of Aqua Yacht and start the 10 Tom, it's narrow there. It's more like a canal. So just a heads up to expect that it's like a canal going down there. Plenty of space for boats to pass, but it's like, it's a canal. South of there, there's really not a lot. This is one of those spots you're probably gonna have to pick an anchorage when you get just south of that. We stayed at the Wilkins Lock anchorage. I'll get that spit out better. Owens Cove anchorages or Aberdeen Lock. So kind of depending on where you're at and how far you get, it's kind of an anchorage night on that night. There's really not an option. So, actually for the next couple of nights, we've got more anchorages. We've got Sumter. Oh, no, we come into Columbus, never mind. So, the first kind of chance to get into a marina past that is going to be Columbus Marina. And again, a great stop for loopers. The people there are so friendly. They just bend over backwards to try to accommodate everybody. I've heard that Columbus has been rated one of the top 10 spots to stop at or visit from loopers. I don't know if that's true or not, but we didn't get a chance to go into town. We were traveling with other boats that we took off with them. So it's a little rustic back there. Their docks are a little rustic, but it's a great stop other than that. So
yeah. And a little fun fact about Columbus. There is a commercial airport in Columbus, Mississippi. I think it's Delta is the only major airline that services it. But myself and another looper both needed to get out of the 10 Tom for something. Yeah. And if you are flying, Columbus is the place. It's less than a 15-minute taxi ride, I think, from the marina. So very reasonable to get there. You know, there's not many flights in and out, but we get asked a lot about where I need to go somewhere. How do I get out of there? Columbus, Mississippi is your place if you need an airport.
I didn't know. That's good
interesting, right? I don't know why it's a very small airport, but it does the job.
And again, after Columbus, you're going to hit a stretch where you're probably going to have to anchor again. So we've used multiple anchorages along in there. We've done Wyndham Landing, Rattlesnake Bend, and Sumter Creek anchorages have all been places that we've stopped. Then we get down to Kingfisher Marina in Demopolis. And again, that's another great stop. We were really pleasantly surprised when we came through on our second trip through to see how much they've built up in that marina, how much more amenities they've got. It was a wow moment when we pulled into that marina the second time. So strong recommend there. When you're at the Kingfisher Marina, you definitely want to get together with other loopers, and call the lock. Because that is one lock. The Demopolis lock really appreciates you calling as a group to go through. When we went through last time, they were saying they were only locking people through on the odd hours. So, but the Kingfisher, they know. Just ask them. They knew exactly what was going on with the lock. So,
yeah. And I want to just go ahead and recommend that loopers kind of do that all of the time with these locks. That's they're there primarily for the commercial interests, which is a bonus to us because it means in things like a government shutdown, they are considered essential and they continue to operate. But it does put us lower on the priority, and grouping together just means that the lock operators have an easier time putting through 8 boats or 12 boats than one, and then 15 minutes another one shows up. So definitely try to do that. Also, Demopolis and also Columbus that we just talked about are very near the next lock. So you can coordinate that while everybody is still tied up and check in with the lock operators for a good time for everybody to show up. So let's, makes it easier for the lock operators, which in turn makes it easier for all of us if we kind of work together. And Demopolis also has a yard. Kingfisher has a yard there, so I have to shout out to them because we left there and dinged a prop not far from there and limped our way back on one engine. And that was a Sunday, and they hauled us the next day for a quick haul. We had spare props, put the other prop on us for us, and we were on our way super fast. So, these things happen. But there is a yard there. So, all right. So we're getting there. We're getting closer to saltwater again. Tell us what's next.
So both times through, our next stop was Acatuppa Creek anchorage. So we went into Acatuppa Creek. Actually, I'm going to check some of the notes really quick. So if I remember Acatuppa Creek. Get off the river. Yeah, so Acatuppa, you can actually get into that anchorage. There is a little creek that you can pull into. Our 36-foot boat, we can do a spin and then bow out coming into the river.
It looks a little intimidating because it's got overhanging branches, but once you get up there, you'll see it opens up.
And plenty deep enough for even deeper draft boats to get back there. They might have to back out though, but we love Acatuppa Creek. It's one of our favorites. Do be aware if you're anchoring there though, that there are fishing boats that will come in and out past you. So try not to, try to leave a pathway they can get around you if possible.
Right.
So,
okay. Good advice.
Yep. And then both times through, we used a Tensas river anchorage, and I might not be pronouncing that correctly, but we used that river anchorages both times coming down too. After that, on our first loop, we made the jump to Fairhope, Alabama from that anchorage. Next time coming down, we actually stopped at 12 Mile Island and anchored at 12 Mile Island, and had a nice, peaceful, calm night. I will say that one of the things that happened to us about that point on the rivers, our first time through, because we were using strictly our old Garmin chart plotter that came with the boat, and all of a sudden we hit that point and all of our depth and all of our routing went away and panicked us a little bit. We had what I call my boat angels, that a guy came by us and said, "Hey, I'm heading out. Anybody wants to know where to go, just follow us." And we're like, "Yes, please." So we followed him out. But after we got into Fairhope, we realized that on our old Garmin, there's a setting for saltwater. So as soon as we clicked it over to saltwater, everything came back again. But we were in a little bit of a panic mode for a bit there. So in case it happens to anybody else, just a heads up, there might be a salt versus freshwater mode on your charting. So
yeah, very helpful. That Tensas or Tensaw, I'm not sure the proper pronunciation of that one either, but we've used that as well, and it's one of my favorite anchorages. We've been there with other boats, and there's just plenty of room. That's also a spot that I have heard that auto route sometimes really messes people up because it tries to continue you down that river to Mobile Bay, which it looks like maybe it connects, but not navigable for boats of looper sizes. So don't do that when you leave the anchorage. Go back out to the main river to the Tom Bigby and continue south on your way there. You're going to have a long trip backtracking to get back to there. But yeah, Mobile Bay brings you back to saltwater. You'll be seeing dolphin. If you've started from freshwater, that might be your first opportunity. Yeah, it's a lovely trip. So I appreciate you sharing the trip down the 10 Tom, from Paducah all the way down to Mobile. Talk to us a little bit about what locals have told you or where you first started seeing gators, because you will see them, and we certainly want people who might be trying to go to shore to walk dogs to be extra cautious of that. So, is it at the Alabama line pretty much, or is it a little further south from there?
I was just looking through my other notes there. It's a little bit farther south. And I'm trying to think where our buddies told us Wilkins Lock. So it's Wilkins Lock. You could start seeing potentially alligators. We traveled with some folks who were from Alabama, lived right on the 10 Tom for many years, and they actually would see bull sharks that far up too.
Wow.
Yeah, bull sharks and alligators and rattlesnakes. They have a story about, there's a reason it's called Rattlesnake Bend. One of the anchorages is called that because from that point you can see rattlesnakes in the river too. So just keep an eye out. So
nope, I am out then for that that anchorage. I'll take the gators and the sharks anytime over the rattlesnakes. So any last thoughts, anything I didn't ask about or that you haven't shared that you think might be helpful to those who are headed down the rivers now?
Can you think of anything?
No.
No, not necessarily. The only thing I will say is coming down the Tenn-Tom, it's such a remote, for the most part, such a remote area, and you're in all this beautiful, especially if you're coming down in the fall, you've got all the beautiful foliage. And then all of a sudden you come into Alabama and Mobile, and boom, you're in this big, heavy port with big freighters, and it's almost a shock to your system when you hit that Mobile port, and it's like, okay, all right, we're back to the big boat. So,
Well, heavy foliage, leaves stuck.
oh, yeah,
We had a leaf get stuck to the bottom of the boat on the strainer. We tried shutting the boat off and coasting to try and get it off,
Mm.
and I finally had to jump over the side and go get it.
Oh, wow.
Now I've got a hose with a clean out that I can screw on and just blow through the hose and clear out the strainer.
yeah.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah,
And-
that's something that doesn't happen every day, but you certainly want a way
Yeah.
to correct it when it does.
Yeah,
And one of our friends that we called, we did phone a friend from the river, and one of our friends said, is it black smoke or white smoke coming out? White smoke indicated it wasn't getting enough water
Steam.
flow. Yeah,
Yeah.
steam.
Ah,
So that's
gotcha.
how we knew it was
Gotcha.
steam.
One last question, and I don't know if you'll know the answer. I don't want to put you on the spot with it, but fuel can be a question mark. We always tell people that the longest distance between fuel stops is Hoppies to Paducah, which we covered in the last time we did one of these episodes.
Sure.
And that's 200 miles, but it's pretty close to 200 miles for part of the Tenn-Tom. And I think it's probably from Demopolis to Bobby's Fish Camp, if I'm not mistaken. Is that you're good? I guess probably the point I'm trying to make is you're probably going to want to fuel up when you're stopping at a marina before you start hitting all these anchorages. Fueling up is probably not a bad idea.
I'm trying to think, so the thing with our American tug is we've got a 900-mile range.
So you don't have to worry about it too much.
I was trying to think if we fueled up on the river at all. I don't know if we topped off at Paducah or not. The one time going through, I don't.
Paducah we did it.
Did we top off?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but with a 900-mile range, I think the second time through, we waited until we got to Orange Beach, Alabama before we topped off again. So
Yeah, but so certainly all of the marinas we mentioned today have fuel. We
Correct.
don't have nearly the range that you have, but I do believe, and maybe you remember the mile markers on the Tenn-Tom, it's 400 plus miles from Iuka to Mobile, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's
Mhm.
450 miles. Once you go by and start the Tenn-Tom, once you go past the Pickwick Lock and get down that way, it's 450 miles, and the mile markers go down. So it tells you how far you've got to get to the Mobile Bay, because Mobile Bay is mile 0.
Right.
So you can be counting down the miles at that point. But yeah,
Yeah.
450.
And so I think the only fuel stops once you start that actual Tenn-Tom portion are Columbus Marina, Kingfisher, and Bobby's Fish Camp, which we didn't mention. I wouldn't even call it a marina. It is just a dock. They sell fuel. It is pretty high priced. It's not for the fuel. I think the fuel was fairly reasonable, but for dockage, it's a supply and demand thing. And if you prefer a dock over in Anchorage and you're willing to pay for a dock with no amenities, by all means, have at it. There are anchorages nearby too, if you don't want to pay, what they're asking for dockage. So,
Right.
but yeah, just be aware of your fuel, because if you skip some of those fuel stops, you might be on the edge as you're kind of approaching Mobile Bay. So
It's kind of like driving out west. If you drive out west, you don't pass a fuel station. So
there you go. Good analogy. I like it.
Pass a fuel station, yeah.
Well, this has been a great discussion. I think we've, covered a lot of the waterway, but also given some great tips. So Carolyn and Pete, thank you for joining me. For those of you who enjoyed this, Carolyn and Pete are going to host one of the virtual Docktails breakout rooms this month. That's a few weeks away. The details are on our website under the events menu. You'll find virtual Docktails. There are 5 topics. You can pick the one you would most like to attend. If you choose the one that will cover Paducah to Mobile, can't guarantee you that Carolyn and Pete will be your hosts, because last time I think we ended up with 4 rooms covering the topic after we did the podcast. We try to limit it to a small number so that it can be an interactive discussion on the virtual Docktails, just like in-person Docktails would be. So for those of you listening or watching, hopefully you'll consider joining us. You do have to be an AGLCA member to join that. And again, Carolyn and Pete, thank you for all you're doing to help educate us about the rivers. We appreciate it.
Very
You're
welcome.
welcome, Kim.
Yep.
And to everyone who's watched or listened, thank you as well. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.